Welcome back. And as I said, we're going to turn our focus to the budgets of the various states of this country, because for a very long time now we've been talking about the federal budget. Not much has been said about the budget of the states of the country. And joining me to do that discussion, and of course we'll also be looking at the federal budget in the course of the discussion as well, we have Muda Yusuf, who is the Director General of the Lagos Chamber of Commerce and Industries. Thank you very much for coming on the program.
Thank you very much.
Before we begin to talk about the budgets of the states, because I mean that's of particular concern to me now, but let me just get your general take on the federal budget of 7.44 trillion naira.
Well, the budget is not significantly different from what we have had. And in real terms, it could even be a smaller budget than what we had last year.
Because even though some people have said that the budget is too huge.
Yes. Nominally, it looks huge. But in real terms, by the time you adjust for inflation.
And the exchange rate.
The latest figure of inflation is slightly over 17%. And you adjust for exchange rates. I mean, all this in real terms, you collapse the number. So in terms of the size, it's not so huge. But in terms of the allocation, of course, there is a slight improvement in terms of the relativity of allocation between capital and recurrent, although it's still a far cry from where we should be. Currently, I think we have...
Better than what we've always had.
Yes, far better. I mean, before now, we used to have maybe 15% capital, 85% recurrent. But now we are having 30% capital, 70% recurrent. And some of the recurrent items we cannot actually run away from, because some of the ministries are actually very intensive in terms of manpower. If you take education, for instance, you need teachers to run, and you need a lot of them. As we speak, there are issues of even inadequacy of teachers. If you take the health sector, you need nurses, you need doctors, you need all sorts of people there. If you take defense, you have a whole lot of personnel that you have to take care of. The same thing with the police affairs. So for some of the ministries, huge recurrent is almost inevitable.
Exactly.
By virtue of the nature of the ministries. So that is why you will see a ministry like Works. You have more capital than recurrent. A ministry like Transportation, you see more capital than, but for some ministries, it's inevitable. So when people do a critique or saying that the current expenditure is too high, I think we need to also be careful.
Because we need to talk about it in context. So
exactly.
Because whether we like it or not, it's not as if the money under recurrent goes to waste. I mean, the money still goes to workers anyway. But I want us now to talk about the states. You look at the 36 states of this country. By the time you collapse the entire budgets of these states, it comes up to something very significant. For instance, the figure we have, 33 out of 36 states now have actually released their budget that we have, and the total actually come up to over 6 trillion, close to 7 trillion maybe by the time the remaining 3 states release their budget. Now that's quite huge. But the problem we have is that we are always concentrated on the federal budget. People are not talking about the states. And fact is that, I mean, if the federal government is saying it plans to spend 7.44 trillion, and then you take the close to 7 trillion also from the states, pump that into the economy of this country, across the country, that will make a huge difference.
It does. And that is one of the weaknesses of our democracy. The level of engagement at the state and local government level is so weak. And unlike what we have at the federal level, where occasionally at least you see some maybe positive face-off occasionally between the assembly and between the National Assembly and the executive, you hardly see that at the state level.
And there's not been critical analyses of the budgets of states in this country.
So both at the level of the legislature versus the executive at the state level, and at the level of even the citizens' engagement, nothing is actually happening. Democracy is about engagement. It's about participation.
And I think you're quite right, because if, for instance, the local government areas, apply their budgets appropriately, they'll be able to take care of people at the local level. The states will take care of people at the state level, and then you have the federal. And then you look at what, for instance, let's take Lagos State for as a clear example. Fact is that people say the Lagos State government is doing well, it's doing all of that, but the fact is that whatever it is doing is tied to the budget and what it is able to raise internally. Unfortunately, we're not talking about that for the other states, because you look at their internally generated revenue too, so very poor. And when we are not shining the light on these state budgets, the governors are not basically compelled, so to speak, to try to improve
Of course.
things.
You see, that is very important. And even sometimes the federal authorities also don't help matters.
Okay.
Because each time the federal government budget is released, there is so much promises around the budget. And it's going to reflect the economy, it's going to fix infrastructure. Whereas the states have a lot to put on the table in terms of infrastructure, in terms of agriculture,
so the federal government too might be sending wrong impressions.
Of course. And that is why you always have a crisis of expectation. Expectations are raised when the budget is released, and at the end of the day, people will say, we haven't seen anything. Because the problems are much bigger than the federal government budget. We have a country of a GDP of 100 trillion. You have a budget of 7.4 trillion. That's just 7% of the GDP. The budget to GDP in America is over 20%. In Ghana here, it's over 30%. Here we are talking of 7.4%. What can that do? It's like getting a goat to push an elephant. That is it. So we also need to manage the expectations, even at the federal, and we also need to sensitize the citizens that the states and local government have a lot they can also put on the table. If they need to adjust their budget, they are recorded, because some of them are carrying very huge overheads that they have been carrying at the time when oil price was over $100. Some of them are still carrying it up till now. That's why by the time they pay salaries, nothing is left to do anything. So there is need for more rigorous engagement at the state level, because they have a much greater impact on the people.
Local governments too need to publish, because you hardly see anything.
Nothing, nobody, and nobody
in terms of publication.
We don't ask any questions.
It's quite unfortunate, but let's come back to the federal budget now. Let me ask you for your concerns. I mean, some people have expressed concern about the huge budget deficit. I mean, what's your take on that?
Well, you can't run away.
2.36 trillion.
We can't run away from the budget deficit, because clearly we have a major challenge.
Look at how much we're spending on debt servicing, for instance. 1.48 trillion.
Yeah. I think it's even about 1.8 trillion put together.
Put together, yeah.
So the deficit you cannot.
Okay, that's actually for domestic debt servicing. For foreign debt servicing is 175.8. So altogether it will come up to
about 1.8.
Yes, you're right.
It's huge.
Quite huge.
And that is why we say that the debt management strategy of the government needs to be reviewed, because you cannot just be saying that because you have a very good debt to GDP ratio, then you have a sustainable debt strategy. The debt profile in a situation where the amount you are servicing to amount being used to service debt is about close to 35 or 40% of your revenue.
So when you look at the revenue to GDP,
yes,
it's actually
it's a huge thing. It's not sustainable. And part of the reason is that the rate at which government is borrowing domestically is too high. Government is borrowing at 20%, at 18%. That is part of the reason why we have, because the bulk of the debt service is on domestic debt service.
Exactly.
And the IMF in its Article 4 report on Nigeria highlighted this point, that 66% of government revenue was used on interest payment.
That's really high.
This is high. And why will you not have that when you continue to borrow treasury bills 18%, federal government bonds 17%? That is a big burden on the finances of government. And in addition to that, it's creating a crowding out effect on the private sector. How will you, as a business person, now compete with government?
No way.
In the financial market? is zero risk. Treasury bills, federal government is zero risk. So as an entrepreneur, you now approach the bank. Of course, you have to pay a premium on that. And that is why the cost of finance is also so high. I mean, if the bank has an option of buying treasury bills, why must they give you money? But if you crash the rate on treasury bills, crash the rate on federal government bonds, they will have to now be more creative and try to link more with the real economy and with the entrepreneurs.
Another question is, some people have also argued that, you just may not be able to attract so-called portfolio investors or what have you, should that happen?
No. That is not, I don't agree with that thinking. Because what we need more in this economy is FDI. It's foreign direct investment. Those who will bring in their capital here and invest here. These are long-term investors. These are people who have a long-term perspective.
Well, but when they're not coming, what do you do?
No, if you have the right policies, they will come. If you continue to craft your policies to attract portfolio investors, it will create problem. Because at the slightest, feeling of any danger, they will just move their capital out and create all sorts of gaps within the system. That is what led to the collapse of the capital market and the rest of it. So the FDIs are more sustainable. I'm not saying that we should not attract portfolio. They are also useful. But the FDIs are more important. And if the totality of the policy framework is right, both FDI and portfolio investments will come. You don't need to set your interest rate at such a level because you need domestic investment as well. And to drive domestic investors, you need low interest rates.
And that's true.
And they are the one actually
unfortunately,
running the economy.
It's not happening now. It's not happening now.
It's not happening. Because the bulk of the investment you have today in Nigeria is over 80% domestic investment. So if we are talking about turning around the economy, you should look at what interest policy can put on the table. What your foreign exchange policy can put on the table to support them. What your trade policy can put on the table. What your tax policy can put on the table to stimulate all this investment. You cannot stimulate investment when interest rate is at 30%. That is not helping the domestic investors.
Not at all.
And it makes it even difficult for them to compete with foreign investors.
Not at all. I have to ask you one question finally, just before I let you go. You think the delay in the passage of this budget would eventually or ultimately affect its performance significantly?
Well, not significantly because of the caveat that we now have in the budget. That's
the cycle. The
cycle will start from when there's an assent to the budget. That has taken care of that. But that is still not the best. What is ideal is that we return to the January-December budget cycle.
Why is it so difficult to do that?
Well, it's because of the issues of the budgetary process. You have capacity issues.
It's quite a surprise that we can't have a new budget at the beginning of every year.
I think what we need first is the capacity at the level of the bureaucracy, the executive, and at the level of the legislature. Then we also need the discipline to go with a proper time frame. In other claims, you have a clear time frame as to when the budget should be presented, period through which it has to stay in the National Assembly, and the period within which it has to be assented. And they follow these things religiously. So it requires a lot of discipline to be able to make sure that we have a time frame within which the budgetary process will have to function. That is very important.
Well, implementation is key. Let's just hope
because
we have a document now that looks good, so to speak, even though there are concerns, but implementation is the key. You don't have any problem at all with some of the benchmarks?
Well, not seriously. They look realistic. Although
for the 4.5,
the exchange
some people
rate
have said it's close to 50.
Well, but I mean the predictions is that at least the threshold for oil price will still between 45 and 50. So I think you can live with that. And in any case, it's not cast in stone. if the money is not there, you cannot spend it anyway. Yes.
But we want the money to come. Thank you very much for coming on the program, and thank you very much for your contributions. Well, that's it on the program. If you want to watch it again, all you just have to do is go to our website, tv360nigeria.com, and you'll get these videos and lots more. You can also get us on YouTube by subscribing to our YouTube channel. The address is youtube.com/TV360 Nigeria. You can also join us on Google+. It's at TV360 Nigeria. And you can like us on Facebook as well. The address is facebook.com/TV360 online. Do follow us also on Twitter. Our handle is at TV360 online. We thank you very much for watching. We'll see you again next week. Bye-bye.